So Madam Reid is the patron of the Alzheimer Society of Iceland.
Yes.
How long have you been doing that? What have you learned?
I have been patron for almost 3 years now, about 2.5 years, or since just after my husband was elected president. And I've learned a lot of things. It was one of the reasons actually that I accepted the invitation to become patron of the Alzheimer Society, was because I felt that it was an area that I personally wanted to learn more about, and I thought it might be helpful that my relatively younger age could help appeal what the society is doing to a broad age range of people. And it's been very interesting to learn about what the Alzheimer's Society is doing in Iceland, with the campaigns, the awareness generation, the fundraising, and of course the challenges also that they're continuously facing, as many of you are all facing in your own countries too.
So how do you see your role? What are the highlights of it, of your role there?
Well, it's very interesting. As patron, I suppose the number one function of that role is to be a tool really for the Alzheimer's Society when they are embarking on a new initiative or an event or something that they want to draw more attention to within the country. Some of the things that I have done, for example, have been to speak at these monthly Alzheimer's coffee sessions that they have for Alzheimer's and dementia patients and their caregivers, and also to visit the daycare homes that the Alzheimer's Society runs, which we can talk a little bit about too, and participate in promoting awareness efforts and fundraising and things like that.
So there are a number of daycare centres in the country, and the Alzheimer's Society supply some of them.
That's right.
Some of them.
That's right. They supply 3 of the daycare centres. The one that I visited, for example, was actually someone's private home that was donated to the Alzheimer's Society and fixed up so that it can be used that way. And I suppose it follows a model similar to that in other countries, but people who are mostly living at home come to those daycare centres every weekday from about 8 to 4, and they're picked up and they're dropped off at their homes. And they come and have activities for the day. They have speakers such as myself, other specialists, entertainers. They do art projects, music projects. They go on field trips, go on walks, lots of different things.
So I was looking at the website of the Alzheimer's Society of Iceland, and isn't Google Translate a wonderful thing? I think I was able to make some headway. They were saying that there is a big shortage of daycare centres in Iceland, as there is most countries, and there seems to be a big advocacy drive from the society to press for more daycare centres, and also to press for more connected thinking around the subject.
Absolutely, and now finally there is, like in many other countries, a policy platform that's being written by a leading Alzheimer's physician that, at the request of the Minister of Health, and that's hopefully going to be presented this June. But again, that's one of the challenges. People who are diagnosed now, it's about a year-long waiting list to get a spot at one of these daycare centers. We're finding that more and more younger people are being diagnosed, and they have a slightly longer waiting list. And in Iceland, maybe like other sparsely populated countries, there's a special challenge for people who live outside the capital region. So for people who live in remote and isolated communities, sometimes they're actually forced to or choose to relocate their entire families to the capital area just to be able to access these services more effectively.
So when I asked you how do you see your role, you said you see yourself as a kind of tool for the society to get messages out. And is that how the president also sees his role?
There's a story to the Alzheimer's.
There's a story here.
Sometime, at some point, maybe not yet in a moment,
yeah,
photo.
I mean, some of these things happen by accident.
Here's the photo.
Tell us
so I'll have to
what
tell
happened.
you the story. So this is my husband, the president of Iceland, not in his regular presidential uniform, but this sort of hat that he's wearing, we call it, I guess, a buff in Iceland. It's one of these sort of pieces of fabric that you can put around your necks or put on your heads. It's popular in the preschools if there's lice also. And they're sold to raise funds. So schools have them with their brands, companies have them with their brands, this and that. And the Alzheimer's Society, when I had agreed to become the patron, sort of presented me with a bag that included this and tote bags and things like that. And one weekend, when I was abroad traveling, I hasten to add, my husband was doing an event just outside the presidential residence at Bessestadet, which is on this isolated peninsula just outside the capital. It's very windswept, it's right next to the sea, and it gets very cold there, even in the autumn. And he was unveiling some sort of a plaque, and it was very, very windy. He always insists we defend this. And so just as he was walking out the door, he thought, he was new in office too, he thought, oh, there won't be that much media there. I'll just grab this to protect my ears and my hair, and I'll put that on. And so he had his suit and tie on, and he grabbed this stuff, and of course there were plenty of media there, and this became the news story, obviously, which is a whole lesson in and of itself. But all of a sudden, the Alzheimer's Society buffs began to sell like hotcakes, as they say. And they actually said it had a tangible increase in their revenue sales. I since have teased my husband about being a fashion icon. But so he has done this, and we have now also amassed a rather impressive collection of buffs from every other organization, because like every time we pay a visit somewhere, we get presented with new ones. But I feel like the Alzheimer's Society one has a special place in our hearts.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. We've heard a lot about stigma today.
Yeah.
How important it is to bring Alzheimer's and to bring dementia out of the cupboard, out there, and destigmatize it.
Absolutely.
Get rid of people's fears or help break them down. What is the Alzheimer's Society of Iceland doing around that? Is it a stigmatizing disease in Iceland?
It was, I would say, more so 10 or 15 years ago, and that's an area where there's been a lot of improvement. But if you imagine that the population of Iceland is 350,000 people in the whole country. So everyone is connected to everyone else. And so if you have a disease like Alzheimer's or have just been diagnosed, there was a lot of stigma because you thought if this person found out, the whole village would find out, or your employer would find out, or everyone would find out. And now, very thankfully, people have realized that it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's like getting anything else, and people are a lot more comfortable talking about it.
And are they, I mean, really?
Yes, to the extent that a friend of mine was at the swimming pool the other day, which in Iceland is where you go like a cafe or a pub, and everyone is talking in the hot tubs there, and everyone started to talk about politics and normal conversation there, and he announced to everyone before, I have Alzheimer's, and then continued to carry on the discussion, which I assume was just a way of prepping people in case he said something that sounded a little bit different. But, no one blinked an eye, just continued.
Oh, wow. So that means that
I think if it's reached the hot tubs, we're okay.
So that's really the mission for everyone here, isn't it? That in the cafes and the hot tubs, people are happy to say, I have Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And to answer that point that Birgitta said earlier, now if I say I have Alzheimer's to you, will you go and have lunch with me or not? Isn't that the question you asked, Birgitta? Yeah. How wonderful to
And
hear.
I mean, and I say that, I'm sort of speaking lightly, but of course, in all seriousness, that's a huge achievement and extremely important, and something that we do need to continue to talk about and to continue to educate young people about as well, so that people feel they can talk about it and that it's something that's affecting all of us.
Madam Reid, it's been a pleasure having you with us. Thank you so much.